This portion is Parsha Tetzei, when you go out to battle. And the rabbis interpret this to mean a spiritual battle, not just a physical battle. What I'd like to talk about today is just the first 5 verses. First, I'd like to read the verses with the Rashi, then look at the discussion of this passage in the Talmud, which is really the reason why I want to look at it in the Talmud. It's a very brief discussion of it, but it's in our Daf Yomi. So therefore, excuse me, it's going to be the discussion in the Daf Yomi in less than 2 weeks. So it's really a missed opportunity for us to not highlight it. And then after we do that, I'd like to look at what some of the classic commentaries say about this verse, what the Dudaei Reuven says, and what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says. Hold on, just give me 1 second. Okay, so we are beginning our portion, which is Parshas Tetzei, which is chapter 21, verse 10. Chapter 21, verse 10. When you go out to battle upon your enemies, and God gives your enemies into your hands, and you take a captive. Rashi says, what are we talking about when you go out to war? Rashi says, we know that there are at least 2 types of wars, and some say 3, that there's an obligatory war, a war that's a mitzvah, and a discretionary war. So we're referring to when you go out into a discretionary war, meaning to say it's not about conquering the land, and it's not the war against the Amalek. And you take a captive. Vishavisa sheyo, meaning to say, who is this captive? You capture even an enemy, the enemy women. See, these are people, if they would be in the land of Canaan, you'd be obligated to kill them. But because outside the land of Canaan, if a Canaanite runs there, you can let them live. So you capture this Canaanite woman, and you see amongst the captives an Eishes Yifas Torah, a woman who is beautiful. And Rashi points out, who are we talking about? This is going to be shocking. Even a married woman. You see a married woman. And you desire her. You take her to be your wife. I want to be very clear that in the modern world, this would be a war crime. This would be a war crime. You see a woman, you think the soldier sees a woman, he thinks she's beautiful, even though she's married. He says, you're going to be my wife. Obviously, this would be something that we would be horrified today if our soldiers did that. Rashi says, how is this possible? Rashi's quoting the Gemara in Kedushin, which we'll see in a moment. Hold on 1 second. What does Rashi say? The Torah is speaking only against the drive towards evil, the evil inclination. Meaning to say, the way most commentaries understand this, excuse me, the way most commentaries understand this, the people have no ability to control their drive. And because the people have no ability to control the drive, the Torah is trying to figure out a way to protect their drive from completely overwhelming them. Rashi continues, if the Torah will not allow this man to marry her in any way, he'll marry her in any way in a prohibited manner. Meaning to say, we have no choice but to allow this. the Torah doesn't allow it. The Torah recognizes that based upon where society is at that point in history, the society was so accustomed that to the victors go the spoils, and the soldiers were accustomed to being able to take the wives of their defeated enemies. So therefore, Rashi says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not allow you to take her. He'll marry in a forbidden manner. Avolim nasa, but Rashi says, have no illusions about this. If you will marry her, if he'll marry her, Sona, he's going to hate her. He's going to hate himself. Because the next passage in the Torah is Kisien Ish. A man has two wives, one whom he loves and one whom he hates. And in the end, what's going to happen is Sofa Laholi Nimena Ben Serera Mora. In the end, he's going to give birth to a rebellious child. That's why these passages were juxtaposed. So Rashi is saying, based upon the Gemara, which we'll see inside in a moment, that the Torah is allowing this because it's trying to limit the damage, the potential damage. Even though there will be some damage, the Torah is trying to say we can't allow it to be too much damage. But this is a bad thing. Rashi says it's a bad thing, meaning to say that the fact that you're taking this captured woman is not a good thing. Not a good thing. But we have no choice. That's what the Torah is saying. In verse 12, Vavisel toch beisecha, and then you take her into your house, V'gilchas rosha, you shave her head, V'asta sipurnea, and you let her nails grow. Rashi says, Tigadleim, you grow them, Kadesha tinavel, so she becomes repulsive. We want to make her repulsive to the person. Yeah, we're going to allow you to take her as your wife, but first, before you marry her, you need to realize that she's not so beautiful and make her repulsive. And she shall remove the garments of her captivity. Shall dwell in your home. She'll cry for her father and mother for a month. And only afterwards is he allowed to be with her. And then she has to be his wife. Let's see what Rashi says. He removes the garments of captivity from her because those garments were attractive. They were beautiful. Because that's the way the enemies of the Jews, they used to dress up their women in order to seduce the enemy soldiers. And so therefore, you have to dress her like a Jewish woman, make her less alluring. And then she dwells in your house. In the house that he uses. He enters and he encounters her. He leaves and he encounters her. He sees her while she's crying. He sees in her defacement. He wants her to become, the Torah wants her to become less appealing to him. So what the Torah is doing is, first of all, slowing down the whole situation. Second of all, the Torah is making her intentionally less attractive, according to Rashi, and the Torah wants this relationship, wants him to be aware. So she's required to be in close contact with him. So he sees what he's doing to her. He sees how he's destroying her life. It's basically required to stay in the prison with her and see what he's doing to her. And she must cry for her father and her mother. And Rashi says, why do you have to make her shave her head, grow her nails, keep her there for a month, take off her garments? Why do they have to do all this? What's the point of making her cry? Rashi says, Bat Yisrael smecha v'zu atzeifa. Bat Yisrael miskashetet v'zu mitnavelet. You want to make the Jewish girls happy, and this girl's sad. He's saying, why are you not marrying a woman from your own community? Why are you marrying this enemy woman? And so that's what they're trying to say. And then if you don't desire her, send her away. Also, another penalty. Once you take her into your house, you're no longer allowed to sell her as a slave. You're not allowed to sell her. You can't work her as a slave because you afflicted her. Right? So is another economic disincentive to trying to take this woman into your home. Because if it doesn't work out after a month, you're not allowed, you lose the right, basically, to have a Canaanite slave anymore. Rashi says, if you don't desire her, here Rashi is telling us the Torah is not saying, and if you don't desire her. Here the Torah is saying, and when you don't desire her, because that will be a sure thing. If you take an enemy woman as your wife, in the end, you will not desire her. You cannot abuse her, you cannot ask her to do work. Rashi says, Lo tishtameshba, do not make her do menial labor. V'lashon parsi koren avdus v'shimush amara. In the Persian language, slavery and servitude are termed amara, which means work. Rashi says, I learned this from Rabbi Moshe Darshan. He was a rabbi in the 11th century Narbonne. And so that's where Rashi learned this. Let me just pause here and see if anybody has any questions before we go to the next piece. Now what I'd like to focus on is, what does the Talmud say about this case of this woman, the Ishes Yefas Torah, this woman, this beautiful captive woman, the woman who was captured and who's a beautiful woman, but she's from the enemy. And so the discussion, as far as I can remember, basically the only discussion of this in the entire Talmud, of course I don't know the Talmud by heart, but now I'm trying to recall, I don't remember any other Talmuds, that the discussion of this is in Kedushin, which is the tractate we're doing for the Daf Yomi, 21b and 22a. And so the Talmud begins on 21b with the question and saying, Kohen ma be fast toar. Can a Kohen, who we know a Kohen is not allowed to marry an adulterous woman, he's not allowed to marry a convert, these are people who are a Kohen is not allowed to marry, is he allowed to marry this woman who's the fast toar? So let me just, before we read this whole passage and go on, let me read I'm using the Art Scroll Talmud, and I want to read their footnote here because their footnote is a great introduction to the topic. So the Torah permits, according to the what we just read, the Torah permits a Jewish soldier to bring an idolatrous female prisoner of war back from her battlefield to take her as a wife. Before he could marry her, however, she had to shave her head, let her nails grow, undergo a month-long period of mourning in his home, and convert to Judaism. This last thing, convert to Judaism, they're basing it on, Yevamot 47b, where this passage also appears, and the Rambam, Maimonides, and Laws of Kings 8:5. The soldier was granted the right to take the captive and live with her only in recognition of the strength of man's evil inclination, as the Gemara will explain later. According to some authorities, and this is a major dispute amongst the medieval authorities, so we have to remember this major dispute. According to some authorities, Maimonides, Rabbeinu Tam, the soldier was allowed to cohabit with her a single time during battle before all the other steps. Other authorities, however, say, no, he wasn't even allowed to be with her once, and he only had the right to be with her after she converted. According to the Ritva and Tosfot, Rashi subscribes to this latter view, that he was only allowed to be with her after she converted. And so that's how we're going to explain this passage of the Gemara, that he was not allowed to be with her until such time, even the first time, until such time she converted. So now back to the Talmud. The Gemara is asking the question, is a Kohen allowed to marry this woman who's a captured woman? Do we say Chidushu, that this whole idea of taking this woman who's an idolatrous woman is basically a novel teaching. It's because there's no basis and there's no other permitted way where it's permitted to be with this idolater. So therefore, it's a novel teaching, and so therefore, since it's a novel teaching, it shouldn't matter who's being allowed, whether it's a Kohen or a regular Israelite Jew, or perhaps we say no, the Kohen is different. Since the Kohen has many more commandments than everybody else, therefore we can be strict about the Kohen. So the Gemara says, Rav says it's permitted. There's a dispute. Rav says it's permitted for a Kohen, and Shmuel says it's prohibited for a Kohen to marry. So the Gemara then says, and now we're going to get a little complicated, but the Gemara says, with respect to the initial act, the Bia Rishona, with respect to the initial act of cohabitation with this captive, everyone agrees that the Kohen is permitted to be with her that one time. Because, and this is the idea, the Lo Dibra Torah Ela Keneged Yetzer Hara. The Torah is only speaking in recognition of the strength of a man's evil inclination. So what we're talking about here, according to Rashi, is after she does this, after she makes the whole month-long ceremony, shaving her head, growing her nails long, crying in the household, then the Kohen is allowed to be with her just one time. Just one time. And that's only because the Torah knows that if we don't even allow that, his evil inclination will be too strong. Where is there a dispute? Somebody trying to ask something? Okay. Where is there a dispute? There's only a dispute with respect to the after he has that initial act of cohabitation. That's where Rav says it's still permitted for the Kohen, and Shmuel says it's permitted. Rav says it's permitted because once it becomes permitted once, it's always permitted. And Shmuel says, no, it's prohibited because she's a convert, and the Kohen is not allowed to marry a convert. This is the first paragraph of the Talmud. I just want to read here the footnote about how the Art Scroll Talmud, which is an incredible work of scholarship, how they explain this idea that the Torah allows the Kohen to be with a captive in recognition of the strength of the man's evil inclination. So now let me read the footnote here in the Art Scroll. As noted earlier, standard principles of Torah law would forbid cohabitation, forbid it, even after a female prisoner, with a female prisoner, even after she converts. Despite this, however, the Torah recognized that in wartime, beautiful female prisoners would represent an overwhelming temptation to many soldiers. In order to avoid the near certainty that some Jews would engage in illicit relations with these women, the Torah legislated a law in recognition of the strength of man's evil inclination. And so therefore, that's the only basis for allowing this. It's just a recognition. Okay. Now, before I just take the question, there's an alternative version that says that even the first one, the initial act, is maybe it's only prohibited for everybody else, but the dispute is about whether a Kohen could even do that initial act. But let me just pause here because I see that there are a couple of questions, and then we'll go on with the Talmud after these questions. Yes. So let me just continue with the Talmudic interpretation. Talmud says, "V'ra'ita ba'shivya," and you see the captured bounty, a beautiful woman. Rashi says, "Bishat shivya." So the Talmud is right away limiting in this. This is only referring to a woman who you see in the heat of the battle. It can't be somebody you see after the battle ended. It's only if at that moment, basically we're really speaking about a person who's unable to control himself. Now, Eshes Yifas Torah, what does it mean? A beautiful woman. So Rashi says, the point is, why does it emphasize that she's beautiful? What's the difference? So it means to say, says the Talmud, "Well, dibra Torah ela keneged hayetzer." The Torah is only allowing this because there's a recognition that is evil inclination is overtaking him. He's unable to control himself. And so the Talmud is saying, the Talmud gives an example. Mutav sheyochu Yisrael basar temutot shlutot. Ba'al yochu basar temutot nevelot. Meaning to say, the Talmud says it's preferable, and this is a crude example, but it's telling us the mindset of the Talmud. It's preferable that a Jew eat the meat of dangerously ill animals that have been properly slaughtered, which generally speaking, we don't want you to eat such animals, but don't eat animals that were not slaughtered who are dangerously ill. Meaning to say, we'd rather you do something that's wrong, but not as wrong as something else. We're trying to do, remind me of the Talmudic passage, remember Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai trying to save the Jewish people. And why doesn't he save Jerusalem? He just says, give me the Yavnen et sages. The Gemara in Gittin 57. And the Gemara says, give me at least a Hatzolah Porta. Give me a little bit. Because if you're trying to get everything, you won't do anything. So the Talmud recognizes that the Torah is saying, we have a losing situation here. And so therefore we want to make the least damage. And so let me read the footnote here. Jewish tradition considers it repugnant to eat the meat of animals inflicted with a life-threatening disease. Ezekiel 4:14. Nevertheless, if one must eat such meat, it's better to obtain it by slaughtering the diseased animal according to Torah law, thereby rendering it legally permitted, than by allowing the animal to die from disease without having properly slaughtered it. Meaning to say, although it's abhorrent for a Jewish soldier to cohabit with a captive in the battlefield, it's nevertheless that many soldiers would find this temptation overwhelming. Thus, the Torah legislated to permit relations so as to avoid the probability that these acts would be committed in total disregard of Torah law. Now, the Talmud is recognizing that we're not in a perfect world, and the enemy of, and the Talmud is saying if you're going to only allow perfection, we're going to really accomplish nothing. So the Talmud is trying to do a Hatzolah Porta. That's what the Torah is saying. And it says, so let me just finish it. It says, V'chashakta, you desire her, Afal Pisha Eina Noah, even if she's not beautiful. Ba, you desire her, V'lo ba b'chaverta, and it limits it. You cannot take two female captives. It's only one. V'lakachta, you have to take her. The Talmud says, L'kuchen yesh l'cha ba. You have the capacity to establish marriage with her. So, and then it says, Va'avesa, and you take her into your house, and this goes, as somebody mentioned this earlier, you're not allowed to do this in the battle. According to this approach, and this is how Rashi understands it, the soldier was not allowed to touch her in the battle. He was not allowed to touch her, so he took her home, and then after 30 days, a 30-day cooling off period, he was allowed basically to touch her. So this is the Talmudic passage. Let me just pause here, see if anybody has any questions, and then I want to explain how some of the rabbis interpret this. Let me pause here. Now that we have seen the Torah passage, we've seen the Rashi, and we've seen the Talmud's discussion, I want to point out that the classic commentaries view this passage as completely not literal, but actually only as metaphorical. And the key phrase is the Talmud's line, which it says, Lo dibra Torah ela keneged hayetzer, that the Torah is speaking against the inclination. And so the commentaries view this as a struggle, as teaching us insight as to how we can defeat the evil inclination. That's really how the Talmud views this, like a blueprint for how to defeat the evil inclination. And the evil inclination, you know what the evil inclination loves to do? Before I read the rabbinic passages, and this is my understanding of the Dudaei Reuven. You know what the evil inclination loves to tell us to do? You know, let's say you missed prayer services one day. You missed Shacharis. Or you missed going to the davening on Shabbos. Or you missed coming to the shir. You missed the Torah shir. Or you lost your temper. You know what the evil inclination loves to tell us to do? Why should I go again? I'll do it. What's the difference? I'm going to fail. What's the difference? I didn't do it right the first time. I messed up. Evil inclination loves to tell us, forget it. You can't do anything. So what the Talmud is telling us is, no, you attack the evil inclination by doing a little bit, just getting a little bit better. If it's like if you're jogging, and if you look at the top of the hill and you have to go 10 miles up, you'll never get there. So just take one little step, go it a little bit closer. That's the message. You can't defeat the evil inclination if you're saying it's all or nothing. You'll never win. None of us will ever be perfect. We'll never be able to completely defeat the evil inclination that way. But if we just say, okay, let's take it on a little bit. Let's do a little bit better this year than last year. A little bit better. We're not going to be able to not at all take this captive woman, but the captive woman will get into our lives, whatever that sin is for each of us, and each of us have our own sins that we struggle with, whether they're between us and man or between us and God. And if the captive woman seeps into our house, so how do we defeat it? We try to have small victories. We try to have cooling off period. We try to recognize the moments of success. That's the basic message and the way I read the commentaries here. So let's look a little bit at the Dudaei Reuven. The Dudaei Reuven says, the Tosfos asked the question on Rashi, because Rashi says you're not allowed to even take her the first time in the battlefield. So Tosfot is Rashi's grandchildren, they asked the question, well, since the Torah is speaking about the evil inclination, and then if that's the case, I don't understand how this works. If the Torah is trying to cool us down, but you're not allowed to touch her for a month, so how has the Torah solved anything? You're in the middle of that, she's in the battlefield, and this barbarian is out there, and the Torah is only speaking because we can't control him. But now he's taking her back into his home for 30 days. So how's the Torah speaking to that raging soldier out there in the battle? Hasn't this defeated the purpose? The whole purpose is, okay, we'll give him a little bit so he calms down, but it's only after 30 days, and by that point he should be calm anyway. So what is the Torah doing to the soldier to help him calm him down? So the Tosfot answers this question. The Dudaei Reuven quotes a Tosfot. He says, I'll tell you how the soldier is calmed down. He says, because this man has bread in his basket, so to speak, the evil inclination is appeased. Meaning to say, you can't compare somebody who has bread in their basket to someone that's an expression to someone who does not have bread in their basket. Pas pesalo. That at this point, the soldier, his temptation is lessened because he knows he has access, the easier ability to do the sin, and then his evil inclination is lessened. Says the Dudaei Reuven, the Parashazu in this passage, we're standing at the foundational idea of how do we defeat the evil inclination, and the Torah is giving us the blueprint to help us refrain from sinning with the evil inclination. It gives us a blueprint to how do we achieve completeness and purity, because, meaning to say, this is his passage, this is his words, he says, the Torah allows the passage of the Ifas Toar because a person is not able to have strength over his inclination. And the Torah recognizes that. The Torah recognizes we're not perfect. However, even when the Torah allows us this, what's the person doing? The Torah is trying to give us all these different techniques, little different steps, in little tips, aids to help us defeat the evil inclination, to defeat it, to help us limit our temptation. Because what's the main purpose of a man? Even in the battle of life, is to try and improve a little bit his soul, and so that he doesn't go down into the depths of the storm of the evil inclination. And says the Dudaei Reuven, a person who goes out to battle and he captures his captive, and there is a beautiful woman For sure, from the ways of nature, he's going to desire her. However, the Torah says, we understand that there's going to be temptations. You're not going to completely defeat all your temptations in life. So what do you have to do? The person has to slowly work on all these inclinations. So bring her into your house. He's there for a month with her. She's crying, and only afterwards is he allowed. So there is in this idea a way of lessening. Everything is to lessen the desire, limit the desire. And so therefore, this is his paragraph that I'm going to leave you with before we turn to the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The trying to defeat the inclination, this is the highest level, spiritual level, that a person can achieve. A person can be immersed, and if a person is not constantly working on their evil inclination, on their temptations, then the person will be humbled by this evil inclination. And so a person is in the constant struggle against this evil inclination. And we've all seen people in life who we respect, who unfortunately have been overcome they make mistakes, and that's what the purpose of the Torah is, to help us constantly refine our spiritual level so that we can have the ability to defeat it. And this is what the Dudaei Reuven says, that all these techniques that the Torah is giving us are really a metaphor, is telling us little by little, step by little step, we should have the ability to overcome the temptations, the many temptations of life. So now that's what the Dudaei Reuven says, and Lubavitcher Rebbe says something else. Lubavitcher Rebbe basically says the same idea, but he gives a running commentary on this passage, and he's telling us how this is directly related to the evil inclination. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe says as follows. Let me just pull it up. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says, the captive woman allegorically signifies the aspect of our consciousness that had been trapped in worldly materiality. Both our intellect and our emotions must be cleansed of material orientation in order to be restored to divine consciousness. Basically, what does it mean when it says she must shave her head? What does that mean? It's an allegory. It means the excess hair that we must shave off the head signifies the residual life force of the intellect, the unnecessary intellectual indulgences, and the culture of decadence and vanity. So shaving the head means get rid of the excess nonsense that we're committing to with our mind. We're wasting time on stupidities. Shave that away. That's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe says. What does it mean letting the nails grow? It means, so let her nails grow. Now Rashi says, Rashi says it means let the nails grow. But the Talmud records an opposite interpretation, meaning to say that what does it mean? What is the opposite interpretation in Yevamot 48a? Now, what does it mean? It means cut her nails. So, just like shaving the head, also you're cutting the nails. According to this, just as shaving the head signifies eliminating excess intellectual indulgences, cutting the nails signifies getting rid of excess emotional indulgences, represented by the hands, which is the expression of the emotion. So it means to get rid of the idolatrous thoughts in our mind, the sinful thoughts, and also get rid of the sinful emotions. She must take off the garments of captivity. What is this, the garments of captivity? This is the soul's garments, are its powers of expression, thought, speech, and action. Once we have trimmed ourselves of excess intellectual and emotional indulgences in materialistic culture, we then must divest ourselves of the habits of thinking, talking, and acting engendered by the immersion in that culture. So basically get rid of the garments that we clothe ourselves in to sound like these idolatrous culture. I mean to say, the Rebbe is saying it doesn't mean the captive woman is not an actual woman, it's the culture of idolatry. And if you really desire it, first, what the way to defeat it, bring it into your home. Then shave your head, get rid of the intellectual attraction there. Then cut your nails, get rid of the emotional attraction to it. Then Remove your garments, stop talking like it, stop thinking like it, stop expressing yourself like it. And then weep for your father and your mother for Yerach Yamim. What does it mean to weep for a father and a mother for a full month? What month is that? Our month. That's the month of Elul. Tetzei always comes in this month of Elul, which is a month before Rosh Hashanah, during which we prepare to renew our relationship with God on the high holidays. And it says, by the way, in Psalm 27, Ki avi ve'imi yazavuni v'adoshem yasfeni. My father and mother forsake me, but God will gather me in. It means that we get rid of the attraction that we think is our father and think is our mother, meaning to say that the people mistakenly view their culture, the idolatrous culture around them, as their father and their mother. And it says the Rebbe, in this context, the renunciation of excess materialism in our lives by shaving the head and cutting the nails is sufficient for the rest of the year. But the self-renewal to which we aspire in the month of Elul only occurs if we intensify our desire to attain divine consciousness accordingly. To this end, our divine soul must weep for her father and her mother, i.e., we must yearn for the divine awareness it knew before it was taken captive in the physical world. So I'm just showing you two examples of how we have to understand this passage allegorically. Just to summarize what we've said that we have this passage in the Torah which refers to going into battle and just taking a captive woman who's beautiful, bringing into your house and breaking it and taking the captive woman to your house and bringing her into your house and marrying her. It seems okay, completely you have total control. But already the Talmud says no, it's about we recognizing that it's not a zero-sum game, that we want to have little small spiritual improvements. And then in that context, the later rabbis, and many of them, I just gave two examples, two of our favorites, the Dudaei, Reuven, and the Rebbe, both say that this is allegorical, because the main passage, the main struggle in our life is this struggle of how do we overcome temptation. And nobody is perfect. There is no man who has walked the earth who has not fallen to temptation. But what we have to do is work on it slowly. And there's intellectual and emotional and spiritual ways in which we can slowly improve ourselves to refine our ability to control our actions better and better. And that's what this month of Elul is all about. This month of Elul is to help us control and get better, have self-control, and to be better human beings, better Jews, better people in all of our relationships, and to walk better within the path of Hashem. And that's my bracha to everybody here, that everybody here take this month of Elul as an opportunity to improve ourselves spiritually, to come closer and closer to Hashem. I'll stop here. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to address, and then I need to run. Shkoyach.